Welcome to OurSport. I'm your host, Larry. John, America's smartass, is doing the editing. Yeah, maybe one day I'll learn to edit. Anyway, the big story of the weekend is Oregon going down at the hands of Arizona State. So people like to talk about scenario ball. I hate scenario ball when it's too early. Scenario ball is this. Okay, Oregon lost to Auburn in week one. And in week one, people are already like, well, if Auburn does this and this and that, and Oregon still has to do this and this and that to make the playoff, man, that is week one. That is way in the past. Now, there's a time for that, and that topic becomes more relevant and more important, I guess it's the same word, sorry, as the season goes on, and this is the time to talk about it now because the Pac-12 might have just knocked itself out of the playoff. The Pac-12 championship game is going to be Utah against Oregon. If Utah loses that game to the Ducks, Pac-12's out. They're not going to put a two-loss Pac-12 team in there above any kind of SEC team with any consideration. I like Oregon. They're a good team. They have problems winning road games. This was going back for a while. It happened here. Justin Herbert, their quarterback, was off. I don't know how harsh I should judge him. Some of his throws were really well, but if you look, his receivers were covered. He did not have guys getting open. And this has kind of been a theme all year for the Ducks. This is their weakness as receiver. And it didn't help. They started having injuries at receiver to boot. Well, does that sound like a playoff team to you? Even if they, beat Utah, there's a reason they're going to be out of it because they're really not good enough. And Utah, on the other hand, now their schedule is not great at a conference. The Pac-12 is a pretty good conference overall. They do play 9 conference games, unlike teams in the SEC. And you could say that, that maybe they don't deserve to be, or we have them in our top 10 as number 4, Utah. But I do one thing where I go by the eye test. I know some of the teams they played are not great. And you could say that about somebody's resume, like Alabama. They don't play good. Well, look at them. Look at them when they play the game. Use your eyes. What do your eyes tell you? Your eyes are more important than any kind of statistic or measurable or something some stat nerd came up with, and these guys who do analytics. Your eyes tell you how good a team is. And when you see Utah play, they're a hell of a team. They're big, they're physical, and they're playing good offenses. And when good offenses play Utah, those offenses stall. They're going to match up well with Oregon. They have the capability to shut that team down. I don't know if Utah is going to get into the playoff as a one-loss Pac-12 champ, but I think they deserve to. So John and I were at the Georgia A&M game yesterday. Let's move on to them because they're going to be a playoff contender, of course. And I've killed Georgia a lot of the year, I think with good reason, because they did yesterday what they've kind of done all year. They played down to the competition. They stayed within 6 points of Notre Dame. They stayed within 6 points of Texas A&M. They're more than 6 points better than these teams. Jake Fromm, who I've killed all year, at one point started 4 for 15. I'm sorry, man. That's not Joe Burrow level quarterbacking or even close. That's a high standard to compare him to, but we're talking about, is this team ready for the playoffs? A playoff team's quarterback is not going 4 for 15. I will say this about Georgia. Man, they looked the part. You see them, holy cow, on the hoof, big, fast, athletic, and I have to give them credit for this. That's a good defense. That's a good defense, and they learn how to tackle. Kirby Smart taught them that. He's getting the most out of their defense. The pass rush was kind of anemic to start the year. It was a worry, and this is what well-coached teams do. They have something, and they improve on it throughout the year if they have the physical capability to do it. Georgia's always had the physical capability to rush the passer. Wasn't happening early in the year. Started to happen more and more as the season went on because Kirby Smart, as a defensive coach, knows what he's doing. As a game management coach, as a big game coach, I don't know. Between him and Jake Fromm, I don't think they're going to beat LSU. This is their only hurdle. They're going to destroy Georgia Tech, who's having a pretty bad year in a complete rebuild mode. And so that championship game is set. It's going to be LSU against Georgia. The Pac-12 championship set, that's going to be Utah against Oregon. Most of these are coming into form, these championship game contests, what the matchups are going to be. And with that, Baylor also made the Big 12 championship game with their win over Texas. Let's talk about this game. So, I mean, the story here should be Baylor. We should be talking about Baylor, and we are. We're going to. About what an unbelievable job Matt Rule has done with this Baylor program. And we've mentioned him before. We really liked him. Going all the way back to Temple, he rebuilt. No, he didn't rebuild Temple because there's nothing to rebuild. They were never that good. He built Temple into a really formidable program, won a championship there. And when he took over his first year at Baylor, they were 1-11, and I liked him even then. I knew he was on the right track. I saw what he was doing with recruiting, and talk about a real quick climb upward, consistently upward. It's exactly what you want from your coach. This is what a guy doing a great coaching job looks like. He's recruiting, developing, improving. Better as the season goes on, better as each season goes on. That brings us to the other team, Texas, and Tom Herman, who, I mean, he says he was in Mensa, and Texas fans know it because that's like their nickname for him now. Look what Mensa did in this play. Or is this what a Mensa man does? And then you see him at the beginning of this game headbutting players. I don't, it's not like this is the Big 12 championship game against Oklahoma. You're 6-4, and you're trying to beat Baylor. And you're going to get your guys fired up and maybe give yourself a brain injury to get a 6-4 team fired up to beat Baylor. You have to do this. And right, I'm sure Texas fans don't like it. The worst part is they went out there and they shit their pants against Baylor. They played awful in this game. And if you look at this one play that John's going to edit in, man, tackling is about effort. Georgia has great effort. They can tackle. You look at the Texas tackling on this play. What the hell is this? What is this? I mean, guys are taking bad angles. Guys are lollygagging to the ball. Guys are like, oh, you know what? I don't even need to use the front of my shoulder. I'm just going to throw the back of my shoulder in there and try to tackle this guy and knock him out of bounds. What the fuck is this? This is not tackling, right? And stop laughing. You distracted me.
No, it's hilarious.
But it's true. This is effort, and this is bad coaching. And so he is failing at Texas. They're getting worse. They're not getting better. Sam Ehlinger's started to regress, but you can't blame the kid. He feels like he has to carry the whole team, maybe. But they were never in this game, and that 24-10 score is really cosmetic. It's even worse than it looks because Herman called the timeout with about 5 seconds left when it was 24-3. They just got their ass kicked up and down the field in this game. The more physical team, the more disciplined team, the better team was Baylor. That was the better team. And now you have real questions about the future of the Longhorns. They're going to probably ask Herman to make some staff changes, maybe on both sides of the ball. They're not going to fire him, but he's not in a good position right now. And that's going to bring us to something else we're going to talk about in a minute. I'm going to bring in John for this. All right, I'm going to bring John in here because we're going to talk about a coach that's out there that's going to change the landscape of college football. Urban Meyer is out there as an analyst for Fox. He's not going to be there very long. And the question is now, where's Urban Meyer going to go? So I've said this before. I hate talking absolutes, like someone is the greatest coach in the history of college football, because people don't really understand or research the entire history of college football. But this man's resume is up there. He'd certainly be on the medal stand of guys you'd think could be the greatest coach of all time. His winning percentage, his winning championships at multiple schools, his unbelievable record in big games and rivalries. This is one of the greatest coaches of all time. One of the greatest, at least. You can say that. Several notches above many other great coaches out there. Also, not to be undersold, a tremendous recruiter, an unbelievable recruiter. Took Ohio State recruiting to levels that they had not even seen, and laid the groundwork for the team that Ryan Day inherited. It kind of reminds me of 2001 Miami, where Butch Davis left and just handed Larry Coker a championship. That could be what's happening with Ohio State. So the question is, where does Meyer go? Because let's talk about the first candidate, the one that's been talked about the most, USC, the USC Trojans. Well, the word is that the president of USC does not want Urban Meyer as the coach. As great as a coach as Urban Meyer is, off the field, the man's had issues. The man had basically a federal penitentiary in Gainesville with the Gators. I think 39 arrests in 4 years. The man knowingly employed a wife beater. He knew his assistant was beating his wife, and he kept him on in a job at Ohio State. Okay, I mean, you want me to, all you Urban Meyer fans, you want me to say good things about him? I say what's true about him. He gets to be called one of the greatest coaches of all times because he is. He doesn't get to be called one of the greatest humans of all times because he's not. Okay, so this is kind of a mixed bag. So the word is the athletic director who just got hired at USC was told, you will not hire Urban Meyer. They had several candidates for his athletic director position that went in, interviewed, and came out and didn't want the job. And this is why. Because if you're USC, you want to succeed. You want to succeed as a football program, you hire him right off the bat. You're going to be close to dominant. By year 2, you will be dominant. And few, if any, schools have as many resources to recruit talent as USC does. So, USC's out. Where does that leave us? Because Meyer's only going to a certain number of programs. There's a certain standard program he'll go to. That leaves us Florida State. The athletic director at Florida State, when Willie Taggart was still employed by the Seminoles, had said, you know, hypothetically, if our coach got hit by a bus tomorrow, we're not going to hire Urban Meyer. Many reasons there. Probably the character, probably because he's a Gator, and probably because that guy is dumb. Go hire that guy. Go hire this guy and you're going to dominate and win. Who cares about all that stuff? Your bottom line is to win. All right.
Yeah.
So now we have whatever that thing was that Tom Herman was doing on the sideline of Baylor. Not a good look. And this man is he's not doing a good job at Texas. And this is a program, the Longhorns, that wanted to roll out the money truck to get Nick Saban a little while ago. They were wanting to give him a $100 million contract before these things were in vogue. And Nick Saban's agent smartly said, oh, sure, we'll consider it, just to get a brace from Alabama. He was never leaving Alabama. But this team did not like it would be in play 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it would be a pretty quick hook if they fired Tom Herman now. And you might not do that to get a great assistant from somewhere. But you might do it for Urban Meyer.
Yeah. A few things about that. The place he's going to go to has to have a few qualifications. The number one qualification, I think, is it has to be a good enough school. Arkansas has fired their coach. They were absolutely terrible. And they said they want Urban Meyer. There's no way on this God's green earth that Urban Meyer is going to Arkansas.
And they have money. They got Walmart money and Jerry Jones money. He's still not going there.
As they want. He's never going to Arkansas because Arkansas simply isn't good enough. He wants to go to a premier school. Now, this school that he's going to go to also has to have low enough character standards where they could hire him reasonably. Not like USC, not like Florida State. They already said they question his character enough where they're not going to hire him.
Let's pump the brakes on a school that's been called the Criminals about their character standards.
Well, they already said they're not hiring him.
Okay.
So, it also has to be a school that he could theoretically win a national title at.
That's his top goal.
That's his goal, is to win another natty. So, USC, while that's like a premier place, they won't hire him. Now, Texas, he could reasonably go to. And if he shows intrigue in Texas, that immediately makes Tom Herman's seat exponentially hotter. Because if the fans know that after Tom Herman, they're getting Urban Meyer, they want him gone as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
They do not want him to stick around. Maybe he has another year here, maybe he has another 2. That time will be halved if they show interest in Urban Meyer and he responds to it.
Yeah, if he puts out word, to the people of Texas that he wants that job, Urban Meyer's smart enough to where he will also have that leaked in the media that he wants this job. He'll deny it in public. He'll put it out in public. He'll deny it in public, but in private, he'll put that out there because he would want that out there because it would grease the wheels for getting Tom Herman out of there. When Longhorns fans heard about the idea that Meyer wants to go to their school, they're going to scream to get Herman out of there because they're not stupid.
No.
Okay, and I don't think Urban Meyer cares much about throwing an assistant of his former assistant under the bus to get his own way. That's not, he'll do that. And that's a deadly combination because we talked about what an awesome recruiter he is. He's a tremendous recruiter. That's the state of Texas. That he's going to compete with A&M some because Jimbo's not a joke. They don't have to play him on the field. And he loves Florida and Georgia. Even when he was with the Buckeyes, he went down there and he got 5 stars from that state. So he's going to get his pick out of Texas and get cherry-picked 5 stars from Florida and Georgia. They're going to be one of the fastest teams in the country, one of the best teams in the country. It's going to just the dominant team. And who does he have to play? He's going to deal with Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. Well, Riley's good. Riley's really good, okay? And he can develop some quarterbacks. But this is a rivalry game. This is Urban Meyer in a rivalry game. I trust him to win the majority of these, over 50%. Maybe it's only 51. But then who else you have to beat in that conference? The Iowa States of the world are not going to beat Urban Meyer.
Even Baylor. Even with their 9-1 Baylor is not going to do it.
No.
Another thing about the recruiting, though, Texas is the second best state in the country for recruiting. I think only California outdoes them. Maybe they're number 1. They're up there. They take high school football very seriously.
Yep.
We've been to Texas. They have 12,000 seat stadiums for their high schools.
They have 20.
They have 20,000 seat stadiums for their high schools. It is taken like a religion down there. And if you're good, you go to Texas. I mean, Texas A&M can try and get who they want. LSU might rate a little bit from East Texas. Oklahoma might rate a little from North Texas. This state under Urban Meyer will be his. This will be his state. And they are close enough to Georgia and Florida. You look on this map, he was picking players from here at Ohio State. If he's at Texas, he will do the exact same thing while controlling Texas at the same time.
And Texas was like this. Mac Brown was actually a very similar recruiter. He locked that state down. I mean, like the top 20 players in Texas, he'd get like 17 of them. But he kind of made that his focus. Like that was his intent. But Myers, like, out of the top 20 players, he wouldn't want the top 20 players in Texas. He want the top 10. And he's like, they didn't want the top 2 out of Georgia, top 2 out of California. He would be the very cream of the crop in Texas, and he'd still recruit nationally. He'd go get a player out of California, a player out of the Midwest where he knows. Him in Texas, that'd be devastating.
And here's the thing about Texas. It is located almost exactly in the center of the country in terms of east-west. When he's at Ohio State, he's in the northeast corner, meaning players on the west coast were much harder for him to get. Now, he can realistically recruit anywhere and not be so far away that the distance is an absolute deal breaker for players.
So let's talk about if that doesn't happen. Here's the interesting possibility. This sounds a little weird. If Gus Malzahn, perpetually in a hot seat, loses the Iron Bowl in Alabama, he's taken a generational defense and gone 8-4 with it. And they wanted to fire him before. He had a big contract extension. That don't matter. Auburn's willing to buy him out. They have money. And is Auburn the level at some of these schools? Because I can't... I mean, they won a national title in this decade, within a decade, and they played for another one. And you would say they're not even the top team in their own state, but I don't know, man. I mean, they beat Alabama plenty of times with a lesser coach than Urban Meyer.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about this, and I can propose another similar situation to you. So, Auburn is not the top team in their own state. You look at this, they're right next to Alabama, right? They're far enough away from Texas where he will get recruits from there. That was a voice crack. But they will get recruits from there because he's such a good recruiter, but not as many as if he were to actually go to Texas. And then you have a lot to compete with. You have a lot to compete with in terms of recruiting. Urban Meyer is a great recruiter, but you're competing with Nick Saban in your state, who's a great recruiter, a dominant recruiter, as good as you. Kirby Smart from Georgia, who's a incredible recruiter in his own right. Ed Ogeron in Louisiana, who looks like a pretty good recruiter himself. The Florida coach is a good recruiter. And whoever Florida State hires, they might be a good recruiter because they're getting a new coach.
So you're talking about he's stuck in this area, surrounded in driving distance by 5 or 6 powers.
Not to mention Dabo Sweeney at Clemson. They're also near there. He has a lot more to compete with at Auburn. And I also think if his number one goal is to win the national title, he has a much better shot going to Texas than Auburn. Because at Auburn,
your crossover is Georgia.
Every year you play Georgia during the regular season.
Right.
Every year you play Alabama during the regular season.
And LSU.
and LSU
Right.
during the regular season. This is before you play in the SEC title game, if you get there at this point, before you play your 2 championship games, the semifinal and the final game, if you get there. At Texas, you have Oklahoma, who's tough, and then Baylor teams, Iowa State, not a lot. It's a lot less. And in the SEC, there are a lot of good teams that could upset you. Now, maybe not Urban Meyer.
This could be a stretch. This could be a schedule stretch at Auburn. You play that game at the end of the year with Georgia, who's a playoff caliber team. Then you have your Fordham bye week. Then you play Alabama. And then the next week, you play maybe Florida or Georgia in the SEC championship game. And then maybe you play Clemson, and then maybe you play Ohio State.
It looks kind of like their schedule this year.
That's
they had
ridiculous.
a very tough schedule
That's hard
this
to win.
year. So I think Texas will be a lot better option for him
Now.
for that reason. But another hypothetical, which is very similar to yours,
Right.
another coach that could leave his program is James Franklin from Penn State.
Right.
Now, this has been talked about for the past few years that he could potentially go to USC.
Correct.
USC stated they don't want Urban Meyer, but
They didn't state it, but not publicly. They would never state
They're-
that. That's the word. Right.
the word is they don't want Urban Meyer, but they could realistically hire James Franklin, and that leaves Penn State open.
Penn State, they're a power program. They're capable of winning the national title. They're just a hair under the Ohio States and Michigans of the world. Well, that's with their other coaches. That's not with this coach. Because this guy could take that program and they're invested in football now. They care about football. In fact, they care about football maybe a little too much. They care about football maybe more than other things. Because of all his off-the-field character issues, I don't think Penn State's going to mind that much. This is a school that a lot of fans still defend Joe Paterno. Okay, they'll find some way to rationalize what he did, and they'll be like, they'll forget quickly once he starts, going 12-0, beating Ohio State and Michigan in the same year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the OurSport top 10. We have Ohio State 1, Clemson 2, LSU 3. First of all, I think everybody agrees these are the top tier teams in college football. They're above everybody else below them. There's a gap, and within these three, it's real hard to differentiate who I think is the best one. They're all fantastic teams. So, why do you have Ohio State 1? Well, first of all, they have not played a close game. That game with Penn State was not within 10 points. You go back and look at the history of college football, how many times a team has played a schedule and nobody's been within 10 points of them? This does not happen. This does not happen to teams and you can say Penn State was in that game. No, if you look at it, they weren't. They had a couple of turnovers, a couple of short field touchdowns. That game was 21-0, and Ohio State is just dominant on both sides of the ball. Clemson, also dominant on both sides of the ball. LSU probably has the best player in the country and maybe the best offense, but that's a leaky LSU defense. They give up rushing yards to Ole Miss. They give up a lot of points to Alabama. This has kind of been going on throughout the year, and this is one side of the ball where they have some issues. So when they play against a team like Clemson, the Clemson defense, which is undoubtedly better than LSU's, it's not like Clemson's offense can't keep up. It's not like Clemson doesn't have an answer on their side of the ball on offense to where they're that much below the LSU standard. Like, yeah, we have Trevor Lawrence and this arsenal of 6'4" NFL receivers. You want to get in a shootout, we can play that game. We have Travis Etienne, we can play any kind of game you want. They can win in that style. And you can look at all these factors. You look at statistics, you look at their schedule, you look at who they play. Here's one thing I do more than anything else. I wish more people would do this. Stop looking at the stats and the box scores and what the analytics nerds say. Watch the game with your eyes. Watch the game with your eyes. I know Clemson's schedule. I know they haven't played a bunch of tough teams, but they're destroying teams. Your eyes will tell you this team can easily win the national championship, is capable of it because they're that good. They're just a dominant team on both sides of the ball. Fast, athletic. Ohio State is much the same. My eyes tell me that these are the three best teams in America, and I think Ohio State and Clemson are the two most complete teams in America, and I think are the biggest threats to win the national title. That's why I've got Ohio State number 1. So we don't do a lot of previews, and we're really not going to here, but next week looks to be outstanding. Ohio State at Michigan, as always. Virginia Tech, winner goes to the ACC championship game. all the great rivalries, the intrigue around Alabama, Auburn. Great, great. Look forward to it. Can't wait. So thanks for joining us this week. All our social media platforms are listed in the description below. If you want to know what we're all about, we encourage everybody to watch our inaugural episode. And if you have any commentary, you want us to talk about a player or a team, we're user-friendly. Put that in the comments. We'll be happy to oblige. On behalf of me and John, thanks for joining us at OurSport. We'll see you guys next week.